All right, everybody. I know we're getting close to your big test for Friday. This last lesson we're going to do probably this week. So the plan is there will be another assignment that you'll be doing on top of this, but this is the last part of 9-2. It gets a little bit more tricky, and first I'm just going to give you a quick warm-up problem with me. Remember that whenever we had a fraction divided by another fraction, if you notice, this whole numerator is glued together with its own denominator. It looks like its own little problem. Divided by another one, again, with its own denominator. Because this is all one entity with this fraction bar here, I can multiply by a reciprocal. If I multiply by a reciprocal, then I get a 2a on top, and I get the a squared minus b squared on the bottom. So now I'm ready to actually multiply, but before I do that, I'm going to factor and reduce some. So here we are. All right, so this is already factored. That's as much as it can be, those two terms. So we're going to leave it that way. We had a 4 times an a squared that'll reduce with the 2a, but this will factor as an a plus b and an a minus b. When we do that, we're going to be able to reduce like factors. My dog likes the smell of the marker. Leave it. So a plus b will cancel with a plus b. The 4 reduces with the 2, leaving a 2. And the one of these a's will reduce with one of these. Leaving an a down here, don't lose it. So we got a 2a down here, and we got the a minus b. So we ended up with a 1 on top, because everything reduced, and we had a 2a times an a minus b. And you can leave the bottom factored. That's good like that. So I'm just trying to point out, because I'm going to talk about some difficult problems here, that this is a fraction over a fraction. And the reason why I'm able to multiply by a reciprocal is because this whole term down here has a common denominator. So keep that in mind. Because sometimes when we add fractions, which is what you just started to do in 9-2, you had to get a common denominator. So when you look at this, you can see you have an x plus 3 factor in common, but the top and bottom here each need an x. So I end up with a 4x squared plus a 2 on top, and I have an x times x plus 3 on the bottom. Keep that in mind, because the kind of problem we're going to do right now, if I can grab my paper right, is this. Da-da-da-da. Here it is. We have a fraction over a fraction, but it's very different than what I gave you originally. If you look at the original, see how this has a common denominator down here. And here I have 2 stringy little pieces that are not connected very well at all. They're both kind of just hanging out on the top all by themselves. We need to glue the top together with a common denominator just for the top. We need to glue the bottom together. We want to make this problem look like this one, with these kind of big chunky denominators that we can multiply by a reciprocal. So this has to all be pulled together. What do we need to do? We need to get, just on the top, you have to get a common denominator. So 1 is really like x over x. And on the bottom, I'm going to have to multiply top and bottom on this side by an x to get a common denominator of xy. Multiply top and bottom here by y. So what do we have on top? Well, it's going to be an x plus 2 over x. And on the bottom, I have a 3x minus 4y all over xy. Now, because it's all glued together with this denominator, and that's the big kick, is to realize that the numerator and denominator each have to have their own denominators within them, we can multiply by a reciprocal. So we're going to go ahead and multiply by a reciprocal. We have this x plus 2 over x, and this whole fraction as one entity gets to be multiplied by a reciprocal. And now xy is up here, and we have 3x minus 4y down here. Now I can reduce the x's, and I end up with a y times an x plus 2 over 3x minus 4y. You can distribute. You should always clean up the top All right, we always want to simplify the top, multiply it out, xy plus 2y, but if the bottom were factored, we would leave it, and it's just, it's done. It's going to stay just like that. So that's the first example, and the significant point that we're trying to make is that when you have multiple terms on top, what I have here is I have, in the numerator, I have two terms that have not been glued together to make one single term. And so that's what we're trying to do with the denominator. Here, it turned into, down here, it turned into one term. So that's where we're at. That's what we're doing. Okay, so look at this guy. It's pretty involved. We have a 1 over d minus d over c all over 1 over c plus 6, which is like 6 over 1. All right, now I have a problem. I got to pull this all together so that I end up with one common denominator of dc. That's going to glue the top part of this together, okay? And so the whole problem's here. I don't want to slide it down again. I'm going to multiply top and bottom here by a c and top and bottom here by a d. And if you do that, you get, what? c minus d squared. Now that is all. These two separate terms have been glued together now with their own denominator. Now we're going to do that down here. I have 1 over c and 6 over 1. I'm going to multiply just top and bottom there by a c. So I get 1 plus 6c all over c. Again, making that fraction bar in the middle nice and dark helps. We can now, because this has become one fraction, I can now multiply by a reciprocal. So if we come up and we multiply by, the reciprocal would be c over 1 plus 6c. Okay? Just to not make this look so crazy. This is where we're at now with our problem. The c reduces, and that's really it. That's all that's going to reduce. And what do we have left? Well, parentheses are your friends, so you're going to want to use those. Okay? And what we end up with is on top a 6 minus a d divided by d times 1 plus 6c. And again, we leave the denominator factored. The numerator we would multiply out, which it is. It's all simplified. So here's our simplified answer. Remember, the goal of these problems is that if you have multiple fractions in the numerator, they've got to be tied together with a common denominator, like this. Same in the bottom. I had a 1 over c plus 6. I had to tie it all together with common denominator c before continuing. Good luck. The assignment is right here. 565, 566, 14 to 17, 36 to 39, and 45, 46. 14 to 17, 36 to 39, 45, 46. Good luck.